One King, a Knight, and the Beast experience. Hey everyone, I'd link my first post but I don't know how, so if you want the backstory to why I did this, just look under my username. Again, I'm warning you all now, this is going to be long. Also, as an avid reader and writer, I'm going to use my vocabulary to the best of my abilities below. I just want it to be something readable. This isn't meant as a way to get karma. It is a self-post after all, so I will get nothing other than the satisfaction of knowing I communicated my experience well. So last night around 6:30 I went out and bought a fan, because we didn't have one. It took a while, because apparently most stores don't sell fans in the middle of winter. Who knew? Anyway, we did eventually find one. We also bought a nice thick candle so that I wouldn't burn my hand from dripping wax. I should probably clarify who he is. My girlfriend stayed over to help perform this ritual, as well as one of my best friends. They helped out a lot and really came through when I needed them. So my girlfriend and I got back to my house around 9. We were at the mall. She wanted to do a little bit of shopping while we were there. We decided that having another friend over would be a good idea, so I convinced my best bud to come help us out. It didn't take much convincing because I had told him of my predicament earlier in the week, and told him I would likely be performing the Three Kings ritual. He said he would be over as soon as he could. So while we were waiting for my buddy to show, we started getting set up. It took a while to cover all of the windows in the basement and get the mirrors and chairs set up, but we finished it around 11:30. We taped garbage bags over the windows so no light would get in, which took really long. Anyway, we set everything up, turned the fan on, and were about to go upstairs. I got a really strange feeling about this time, so I quickly set up a salt circle around my throne. I was sure to leave it open so that I could step in later, and quickly close it up. We then went upstairs, left the door open, and waited. My friend showed up around 12, and we all made sure we were on the same page. We made plans so that if SHTF we wouldn't be scrambling to get out. I then told my friend he could either sleep in my brother's room, which is upstairs next to mine, or he could crash on the main floor somewhere. He decided he would sleep on my couch in the front room of the house, which is fairly far away from the basement entrance. We finalized everything, turned off all the lights, and tried to go to bed. Sleeping didn't go as planned. My heart was racing and it took all my meditative skills to calm myself down. Unfortunately, I'm pretty new to meditation, so it didn't work as well as I would have liked. My friend too was having issues. He texted me saying he was hearing noises and that he was getting a little nervous. I attributed this to us mostly hanging at his house, so he was likely not familiar with the sounds my house makes at night. I must have been wrong, because he texted me he was going to go out to his car for a bit to compose himself, because he thought he was hearing whispers coming from the basement. One thing you should know about my friend is that he is a brave guy. He is not kind of person to peace out when the situation looks grim. However, he later told me that this sense of fear developing in him was something new that he had never felt before. He described it as strange and alien. So he went out to his car, read for a bit, and then came back in right at 3:30 as I was going downstairs. The alarm went off at 3:30 exactly. I must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke up, hopped out of bed, and quickly got ready. I wore the rosary my girlfriend gave me as added protection, hoping it would help out. I grabbed my power object, my Game Boy Color, favorite thing as a kid, lit the candle, made sure I had my fully charged phone, and headed downstairs. At the top of the basement steps my loved ones wished me luck and told me they would be here for me. The door was open still, and I could hear the fan running, so I went down. Those of you who haven't done this, something that is really important to remember is that 3 minutes isn't a lot of time to get your shit together. As I was going downstairs, still half asleep, I remember thinking to myself, do I really want to do this? Am I ready for this? Well, I can tell you I probably wasn't, but I needed to get this whole conundrum sorted out, so I went on down. I sat down, made sure I had everything I needed, and checked my phone. It read 3:32. I then remembered to close the salt circle, chastising myself for almost forgetting something so simple. One thing I can tell you is that you quickly lose track of time down there. At first, it seemed like nothing was happening and I was alone in my big, dark basement. I was nervous, but other than that, surprisingly okay. Pretty quickly I started to get disappointed because I figured nothing was going to happen, and that I was about to lose a night's sleep for nothing. Boy, was I ever wrong. Suddenly the candle I had started flickering. I'm not talking about a little bit either, I was legitimately getting scared it was going to go out. It looked like it was dancing around, and was casting strange shadows all around me. It was at this point I could feel the atmosphere changing. I was still in my basement, but it was completely different. My eyelids started getting heavy, and I was having a tough time staying grounded in reality. In my peripheral vision I could start to see what looked like movement from both mirrors, and the light from the candle was dancing in my eyes. At this point I was excited and terrified. I could barely muster the courage to speak up, but eventually I did. "Am I still alone?" I asked. My voice sounded far off, and didn't sound nearly as confident as I imagined it would. I sounded very timid, but at least it wasn't a whimper. Immediately after speaking I felt two distinct mental presences crash into me. From the left side I felt an overwhelming sense of anger, depression, hate, and what generally felt like evil incarnate. From the right came these feelings of happiness, joy, and kindness, and was the complete opposite of the opposing force. It felt like I was no longer one person, but was instead three entities fighting it out inside of my body. I remember feeling squished inside my own body, and I was starting to shake. It was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I at one point was sure I was going to be pushed out of my own body, and could feel what can only be described as ego death. I was no longer seeing with my own eyes at this point, and I was now having a vision. Perhaps this was a dream of some point, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but one thing I knew for sure was that I was no longer consciously aware of my surroundings. In my vision, I saw two people standing apart facing one another. One was the dark creature from my dreams, except that now it was wielding a two-handed sword. This weapon had an aura of darkness, and was curved back and forth. It looked like the kind of weapon that would tear a person to shreds painfully. The man standing opposite of this beast looked like a knight. He was decked out in a suit of white armor, and had a golden sigil that looked like the cross imposed on top of the Buddhist wheel. His weapon was a straight white sword, and glowed faintly. They were standing about 10 feet away from each other, in a field surrounded by a blood-red sky. They then started talking, but not to each other. They were each asking for my support in the battle. The beast told me he would crush my enemies beneath my feet, and that I would never again be alone in the darkness. I would never again know pain, because no one would ever be able to hurt me again. He promised power and prestige in exchange for my aid. The knight told me he would watch over me and protect me from evil. He said that pain was a part of living, and that as long as I could learn to forgive, that pain would not matter, nor would I have enemies. He claimed he could help me solve my own problems, would teach me how to live truly, and would bring me to enlightenment. I was completely overwhelmed at this point. The two beings started fighting, and I didn't know what to do. Every time their swords clashed, it felt like the sound was resonating inside of me. I am not going to lie. At this point I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, and I definitely wasn't ready for this. Not too long into the fight, it seemed like the beast was getting the upper hand. As my terror grew, he started to move faster, and stuck harder. The knight was starting to lose ground, and was stumbling backwards, protecting himself. The knight was pleading with me to aid him, or he would fail. Before I could respond, the beast knocked him to the ground and disarmed him. As the beast reared back to end the man, I decided quickly that I couldn't let this thing win. I don't know how to describe it. I felt like my emotions just poured out to this man in support. As the dark sword was arching down, a shield appeared on the knight's outstretched arm and deflected the blow easily. The knight was quickly up and bashed the beast back with this new shield. The creature seemed to fall back easily, cursing both the knight and I. The knight's sword seemed to quickly fly back into his hand just as he was advancing to slay the beast. He swung down hard, and smashed the beast's sword to pieces. The creature fell to the ground, wounded. The knight stepped over the creature, and put the sword to its neck. "You are defeated. Crawl back to the darkness you came from, and never rear your hideous face again, or we shall obliterate you." At this point the creature let out a hissing sound, and was swallowed up by the ground. Suddenly I was back in my body, along with this sense of pure joy and happiness. I somehow knew my dreams would no longer be filled with despair and darkness. The man's voice came from the mirror on my right, and congratulated me for making the right choice. At this point in time I looked to my right, at least I think I did, and into the mirror. He stood there leaning on his sheathed sword. I asked him who he was. He chuckled a little bit, and replied, "You still haven't figured it out? DP4 man. I'm you." And with that he took off his helmet, and revealed himself to be what looked like a more elegant version of me. The way the mirrors were set up, I could see the reflection of the beast from the other mirror, crawling away. It turned back for a second and I could see what looked like a twisted, decaying form of me. Before I could ask any more questions, and believe me, I had plenty to ask, I felt a strange sensation cascading over my head. At first I was confused, but then felt the cold. Time was up. My friend and my girlfriend stood there, dumping water over my head. Apparently they called down and I did not reply. They said they could hear my phone ringing, but I did not answer. I guess when they came down they said it looked like I was in a trance, and was unresponsive. My friend said it looked like my eyes were half open and were moving about rapidly and in no particular direction, just spinning all around. We went upstairs, left all the lights on, and talked the whole thing out. I can see if maybe I can get my friend to write his own account of what happened if there is anyone is interested in hearing it. It would probably be useful to hear another account of it in case I missed any details. Anyway, I would most certainly say this ritual was well worth the effort, and I'm glad I worked up the courage to try it. It was like nothing I've ever done before, and was an awesome experience. If you guys were to ask me if it was spiritual or purely psychological, I honestly couldn't tell you. There are arguments for both sides, but I couldn't decide on one over the other. Instead of just going off what happened to me, why don't some of you try it out for yourself? I can't say it will be similar to mine, and I don't recommend it to anyone who might have a psychological break. But all I can say is that for me it was well worth the stress. Anyway, thanks for putting in the time to read this all and for wishing me luck, guys. Good luck to everyone who gives this a whirl.